What's happening, guys? Aruj again, and today we're talking about cellular respiration. And the whole purpose of cellular respiration is to get this molecule right here, to get ATP, okay? And again, ATP is the energy currency. That means it carries energy around our cell. There's energy in our food, but it's not usable energy. So think of it this way. If you were to have $1 and you want to go to an arcade to play video games, there's value in that dollar, but you cannot directly use that dollar to play video games. What do you have to do first? You have to exchange it at the machine. That machine's going to give you 4 quarters, and then you can go play your video game at the arcade, okay? This works the same way in our cells, but instead of $1, we're going to use glucose. There's energy in that glucose, okay? But our cells cannot directly use that energy in the glucose. It's got to get converted. Just like that dollar has to get converted to 4 quarters. So our change machine is going to be 2 things. It's going to be our cytoplasm, and it's going to be our mitochondria. And we've talked about mitochondria, how they're the powerhouse of the cell. Today what we're talking about is how does the mitochondria produce that energy for the cell, okay? And it's getting it from glucose. So our glucose goes to the cell. It's going to use the cytoplasm and the mitochondria to exchange that energy into 38 ATP. Just like $1 bill will give you 4 quarters, 1 molecule of glucose will give you 38 molecules of energy, or of ATP. Then our cells can use all of that energy to do its different processes, whether it's replication of DNA, a muscle contraction, or if it's active transport, moving a vesicle around, okay? So this is the big idea. We're going to exchange glucose for ATP energy, okay? So here are the different steps that happen. The first step that happens is glycolysis. And if you break that word down, glyco and lysis, what do you think that's referring to? Glyco is referring to glucose, and lysis means to split or break apart. This takes place in the cytoplasm, okay? So this does not use the mitochondria, not yet. This is occurring in this jelly-like substance, okay? So in glycolysis, we're going to split 1 molecule of glucose into 2 molecules that are called pyruvate. So here's a little diagram right here. You have 1 molecule, that bad boy gets split in 2. We're going to call these 2 halves pyruvate. It's going to make total 4 ATP, but in order to break this glucose down, we had to use 2 ATP to start. So I would say it makes 4, but it only nets 2. There's only 2 ATP profit. It's not that much ATP. Let's go to the next step. The second step we have is the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle now takes place in the mitochondria. Now we're working in that powerhouse. Now the mitochondria is working to make energy. It's going to use the pyruvate that we made in glycolysis. Okay, so it's going to use the pyruvate that was made here in the cytoplasm. It's going to make carbon dioxide and another 2 ATP. Okay? The last step of cellular respiration is called the electron transport chain, and this is a different process, but it also occurs in the mitochondria. So we're going to make more energy here. This is going to use oxygen, okay? So now we have to breathe in oxygen. The mitochondria is going to use oxygen, and it's going to make 34 ATP and water. So we're going to have about 38 ATP total. So the mitochondria gives us the biggest bang for the buck. Glycolysis only gave us 2 because it made 4, but it cost 2 to start. The Krebs cycle only made 2, but when we finished respiration in the mitochondria, we got 34 to make 38 total, okay? Now, I color-coded this, so in each process, where it takes place is highlighted in blue, okay? So this is where each process takes place. What is used is highlighted in green. So glycolysis uses glucose, the Krebs cycle uses pyruvate, okay? Electron transport chain uses oxygen. And what is produced, what is the end product, that's highlighted in red. So glycolysis makes 4 ATP, but it costs 2. Krebs cycle made carbon dioxide and 2 ATP, and the electron transport chain made 34 ATP and water. Okay, so our cells do produce small amounts of water. Now, these 3 processes, they can be categorized this way. Glycolysis we call an anaerobic process. Anaerobic. What anaerobic means is it does not require oxygen to happen. It does not require oxygen. Krebs cycle is aerobic. That means in order for the Krebs cycle to occur, it has to have oxygen present. Now, the Krebs cycle is not going to directly use oxygen, but it has to be available in order for the Krebs cycle to occur. And the electron transport chain, that's another process that's called aerobic as well, because the electron transport chain requires oxygen. So again, glycolysis, no oxygen. Krebs cycle, oxygen, that means it's aerobic, and the electron transport chain uses oxygen, so it is also aerobic, okay? Now, if you were to look at cellular respiration, like in detail, everything that's occurring, you would see all of these molecules and all of these energy carriers and all these electrons and protons moving around. I don't want you to worry about that. This is the big overview, okay? This is the big overview for cellular respiration, and I want you to write this down because we're going to come back to this several times. What goes into cellular respiration, what starts off, is called the reactants. Okay, this is what we take in. C6H12O6. That's the formula for glucose. And we're going to take in 6 molecules of O2. That's the oxygen that we breathe, okay? So you can think of it this way. This is what we eat. This is what we breathe, okay? That's what's going to go into us. We're going to eat food and breathe oxygen. What the end result is, after all this fancy schmancy stuff is done, the end result is going to be 6 molecules of CO2. That's carbon dioxide. We breathe that out. And 6 molecules of water. That's going to stay in our cells. And we're going to make ATP energy. Okay? So think of it this way. We're eating food. We're breathing oxygen. We're breathing out CO2 because that's what we breathe it out. And that was made in the Krebs cycle. Okay, the CO2. That's where it comes from. We have oxygen that stays in our cell. Water that stays in our cell. And we have ATP that our cells use for energy. Okay? So here we go. Again, we have our dollar. We got to convert that at the change machine to make 4 quarters. Then we could use that to play our game. In our cells, we have glucose. We have to exchange that in the cytoplasm and in the mitochondria to make 38 ATP, and then our cells can do work. Okay? That's it for today, folks, and I'll catch you all next time. Adios.